Noah by the Jubileers is often cited as one of the earliest recorded examples of a vocal style that resembles rap. The Jubileers were founded around 1935 in Florida, originally under the name of Royal Harmony Singers. They were a gospel quartet whose music was based on vocal harmonies, spiritual, and religious songs. But what makes them interesting to the history of rap is that some of their members began reciting verses with rhythm and rhyme instead of singing all the songs in their original way. One of these examples will be Noah. Theodore Brooks tells the biblical story of Noah using rhythmic speaking style, rhythm, and maintain a consistent pattern. However, Noah was not exactly the first rap song in history, because the concept of rap as a musical genre did not exist in 1946. Instead, Noah is often cited as one of the earliest recorded examples of a vocal style that resembles rap. The word rap is often associated with rhythm and poetry, but before rap existed as a music genre, the practice of speaking rhythmically, telling stories, and using words as a form of a musical expression has already existed for centuries. Cultural roots can be traced by the West Africa, where there were riots. Storytellers responsible for preserving the history of memory of their communities and telling stories about important events through rhythm and poetry. This tradition of using words as a musical and narrative tool is one of the cultural roots that we can later connect to rap. Centuries later, particularly within African American communities in the United States, traditions such as the dozens, spoken word, and different forms of poetry and oral expression development. At the same time, genres such as jazz, soul, funk, and disco help create the musical environment that will eventually give rise of hip-hop. And then we have Jamaica, the country where sound system culture developed. DJs will play music at large parties while toasters will talk, improvise, rhyme, and interact with the crowd over instrumental tracks. Basically, what I do with my friends, but way better.
Me dijeron que soltara algo que venga desde adentro.
One of the most important names under the hip-hop history is DJ Kool Herc, whose real name is Cliff Campbell. He was born in Jamaica and later emigrated to the Bronx, New York.
Just a few minutes away, unseen by most visitors, lies a section of New York that has become an international symbol of urban decay.
In the late 60s and early 70s, the Bronx was going through major economic and social problems. There was poverty, unemployment, and very few places for young people to go for entertainment. Street parties and block parties began to emerge, giving communities a place to come together, dance, listen to music, and express themselves. And that's where DJ Kool Herc comes in.
Giving you a taste. Cut it up.
On August 11 of 1973, he held a party in the 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. During his party, he began experimenting with the breaks in songs. Instead of waiting for the songs to finish, he used 2 copies of the same record to extend the instrumental section, the break, allowing dancers to keep dancing without interruption. This is also where the term break dancing comes from, because dancers would take advantage of those breaks to showcase their moves. Where does rap come into the picture? While the DJ was controlling the music, someone has to interact with the crowd. That's where the MCs came in. MC originally stood for Master of Ceremonies, but the term evolved within hip-hop culture to represent the person who used their voices, rhythms, rhymes, and words over the DJ's music. At first, MCs weren't necessarily creating complete songs like ones that we know today. They will hype up the crowd, introduce the DJs, rhyme, interact with the audience, create calls and response moments, and tell stories. Over time, this style of performing evolved into what we know now as a rap. Who were the first artists to popularize rap? There is no record of one of the single person who popularized rap. It was really the Bronx community as a whole community together who helped develop and spread the culture. But among those pioneers, we have to talk about Africa Bambaataa. born in 1957, was heavily influenced by the Bronx movement and began working as a DJ and organizing parties. One of the biggest contributions beyond his music was founded Universal Zulu Nation, an organization that sought to channel the energy of young people towards music, dance, art, and community instead of gang violence. He was also pioneer in understanding hip-hop as a culture made of different forms of expressions: DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti, not simply as a music. Musically, he pushed the boundaries of the genre by incorporating elements of electronic and European music. One of his most important songs was Planet Rock, that was launched in 1982. Then, for example, we got the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, who helped to take rap from the Bronx parties to get something bigger. Grandmaster Flash revolutionized the DJ with the techniques such as the quick mix theory, which we mentioned earlier with DJ Kool Herc, redefined techniques like the backspin, where the DJ quickly spin the record backward to return to a specific section of the song, allowing for a fast and precise transitions. And then was the cutting, where the DJs will alternate between two records to create new rhythmic patterns, essentially combining two pieces of music in a real time. Then, towards the end of the 70s, something huge happened. The Sugar Hill Gang released the song Rappers Delight, and rap began to transform from a local underground culture into a commercial music industry with global potential. Sylvia Robinson, the founder of Sugar Hill Records, had heard DJs and MCs rhyming at the parties in Harlem. She recognized something that the music industry has not fully understood yet: this could actually be sold as a record. Seeing that potential, she went to Jersey and brought together Big Bang Hank, Wonder Mike, and Master G. The three were not established as a group before, and they didn't even know each other. In August of 1979, they recorded Rapper's Delight, using the famous bass line from Chick Good Times. And then in January of the 1980s, something that had never happened before happened. The song reached top 40 of the Billboard Hot 100, become the rap's first major mainstream hit of all time in the American charts. And this is where the culture exploded. But this was a really interesting contradiction. The artists who brought rap into the mainstream were not necessarily the ones that we talked before, the ones that was built everything at the Bronx, the foundation of the culture. And by that time, that created a criticism and tension within the hip-hop community. Between the 80s and the 87, rap began to experience an incredible wave of industrialization and expansion, making rap start to move outside of New York. When record labels discovered that people were buying rap records, they began looking for new artists. For example, Curtis Blow was one of the first rappers to become a true recording star and helped prove that an MC could sustain a commercial career. Africa Bambaataa, who expanded the parties to all over the places, representing hip-hop as a mechanism for community and a cultural expression of the situation that the people were experiencing by that time, also expanded a lot. Or, for example, like I said, Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five released The Message in 1982, a song that described the life of a person growing up in an environment marked by poverty, unemployment, drugs, crime, violence, deteriorating housing, and a lack of opportunities, representing an environment where survival is difficult and escaping those circumstances seems almost impossible. This proved that you don't only have to talk about parties and dancing, you can also talk about reality. The MC begins to become like a street journalist. Rap expanded through the United States, and some of the most important artists in history began to appear. For example, Room DMC mixed rap with a much more aggressive aesthetic, and one that was closer to rock. At that time, they made an unexpected collaboration with Aerosmith. Walk This Way was especially important because it helped introduce rap to audiences that who will never listen rap. At the same time, artists such as LL Cool J, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions, and Eric B. and Rakim were also emerging. New York was still the center of the culture, but now rap was reaching in radios, television, MTV, record stores, and stadiums. But and MTV became particularly important. People were not only listening to rap and hip-hop, they could now see it. They could see how rappers dressed, the personalities of the MCs, breakdancing, graffiti, and what the culture of New York and other cities looks like. But allows MCs as well to have interviews, promote their projects, talk about beefs, and connect directly with their fans. Early 90s, LA was dealing with many social problems. There was poverty, conflicts between communities, police violence, drugs, and a different, more aggressive street culture. There was a young man, for example, named Tori T, who was talking about these issues, such as in 1985, song Better Rang, directly talking about the tactics used by the police in the city. Something really interesting is that many rappers began emerging at a national level. For example, Scully D from Philly, who released PSK in 1985, song where he talks about streaks, violence, gangs, and his environment. His style was much darker and more explicit for a rap of that time. Ice-T, Tracy Morrow. In LA, released 6 in the Morning in 1986.
6 in the morning, police at my door. Fresh Adidas squeak across the bathroom.
A song that is considered one of the earliest established examples of a gangsta rap of the West Coast. Then in 1987, he released an album called Rhyme Pace, one of the first gangsta rap albums, and helped establish the song coming out from Los Angeles. Then came artists such as Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, DJ Jella, MC Ren, who together formed MWA, and the explosion of gangsta rap was born. Straight Off a Cotton, an album released between the 1988 and 89, turned Compton and Los Angeles into a new chapter of hip-hop and helped establish gangsta rap as a commercial and cultural force, creating a national explosion. Many people will say, were they glorifying violence? No, I think they were reflecting a reality that was happening across the country, a reality that needs to be seen, and what better ways to show it through the art. Since the original boom bap, for example, that was born in the East Coast, then the G-Funk and managed, for example, by Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Warren G, and Nate Dogg, the boom bap in the East Coast, for example, Rakim, Nas, Wu-Tang Clan, and Moby Deep, the gangsta rap in LA, where they were talking about stories about life, crime, poverty, drugs, violence, and conflict with police. Their work came from NWA, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Tupac, the conscious and political rap, where came, for example, artists as Public Enemy, KRS-One, and A Tribe Called Quest, Mos Def. Then we're creating these whole years the alternative rap. It came from De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, and The Roots, or more something like hardcore rap that is something more dark, direct, and aggressive, where Wu-Tang Clan came, Moby Deep, Onyx, and among a lot of rappers that we know. Then another type of styles emerged, for example, the Southern rap, funk, what we know today as the trap, drill, and other type of rhythms, but everything came from the basis. A crucial moment came after the massive growth of rap. New York was no longer the only epicenter of the culture. Now, the West Coast was becoming a major force, along with places like Atlanta, Houston, New Orleans, and Memphis, which came part of what we know today as the Southern hip hop. For example, a list of the different aspects and how these have been growing these whole years. In Atlanta, debuted in 1994, the Outkast with Andre 3000 and Big Boy. Goody Mob in Atlanta as well, development the Southern hip hop. Master P in New Orleans turned No Limits Records into an independent powerhouse. Scarface in Houston, who one of the biggest figures in the Southern rap. Then the UGK, Bone and Pimp C in Texas, that also have been growing the Southern rap as well. The 3-6 Mafia in Memphis that developed the dark sounds of the rap and influence to the future of what we know today as the trap. Juvenile in New Orleans that became fundamental to the Cash Money sound. And at all of this time that everything has been developed during these whole years, at the same time we see important figures emerging, such as NUNEZ, who debuted with Illmatic in 1994, became one of the greatest references in lyrical rap. The Notorious B.I.G., who became one of the center figure of the East Coast. Jay-Z, who began his career in 1996 with Reasonable Doubt and created a major success. Wu-Tang Clan, a group that revolutionized the concept of the rap groups. DMX, who exploded in the latest of the 90s with It's Dark and Hell is Hot. Method Man, a member of Wu-Tang, who later built a very successful career by himself. Lauryn Hill with the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Busta Rhymes, who begins with leaders of the new school and later developed a huge solo career. Tupac, who made one of the biggest cultural explosion that happened in the 90s. Snoop Dogg, who appears with Dr. Dre on the Chronic of Exploded and make more famous with Doggy Style. Ice Cube, who dominated his solo career after leaving NWA. Dr. Dre was turning G-Funk into a dominant sound and became one of the greatest producers in the history of the culture. Warren G, who helped popularize the G-Funk sound with Regulate, and Mac 10, who was also very important with the West Coast scenes. It's important to mention all of these people who began giving the culture a voice and much bigger levels of exposure, showing that anyone who respects the culture could become part of it. But something happened.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing. Come to Death Row.
I'm the executive producer that a comment was made about a little bit earlier. But check this out. Contrary to what other people may feel, I would like to say that I'm very proud of Dr. Dre, of Death Row, and Suge Knight for their accomplishments. And all this East and West that needs to stop.
The story between Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G. is one of the most important and tragic stories in hip-hop. Initially, they had a friendship based on a mutual respect. They met through the rap scenes in the early 90s and shared personal and musical moments together. However, their relationship began to deteriorate after Tupac was attacked and shot in November 30, 1994 at Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan, where he was there to record music. Tupac survived the attack and later accused people connected to the Bad Boy Records scenes of having knowledge involvement in the shooting. And it's crazy because in that night of that shooting, Puff Daddy and Biggie were in the studio. They were in the studio that happened, and they denied that they didn't know what happened by that time, but it was weird, honestly. While Tupac was recovering, the Notorious B.I.G. released Who Shot Ya? A song that had actually been recorded before the shooting and which Biggie's stated that was not directed to Tupac. However, the timing of release caused Tupac to interpret was a provocation. Afterward, Tupac was convicted in a sexual assault case. While serving his sentence, he received help from Suge Knight, co-founder of the head of the Death Row Records, who paid approximately $1.4 million for Tupac's bail in exchange for Tupac singing with Death Row and fulfilling his musical obligations. Once he was released from prison, Tupac joined Death Row, and his couplet with Bad Boys record intensified. In 1996, he released Hit 'Em Up, one of the most aggressive diss track in rap history, in which he directly attacked Biggie, Bad Boy Records, and other East Coast artists. The song turned a personal rivalry into something much bigger: the West Coast versus the East Coast, fueled by the media, record labels, street circles, and the artist's own statements. What started as a conflict between two friends eventually became one of the most dangerous rivalries in the music history. Tupac was murdered in Las Vegas on September 13 in 1996. Later, 1 year later, in March 9, was murdered Biggie. This was the most transcendental body as we know today, because of course, from being friends then to have a really huge rivalry divided basically the whole country, something that we still have today. We have the West and the East, and none of them still like connecting each other. It's strong. It's something that separates completely both coasts, and it's crazy. And of course, the rivalries, there were a lot of rivalries during years. For example, the ones that had before 50 Cent, Roxanne Wars in 1984, Boogie Down's production versus Juicy Crew in 1997, Ice Cube versus NWA when he left the NWA and they were like making diss tracks to him, Jay-Z versus Nas, T and Drake, or the most recent Kendrick versus Drake in 2024. Like, this is something that has been happening during the years, that normally starts to demonstrate to the world who has better pencil, who has better rhymes, who has more credibility, and who lost is the person that doesn't believe what they're saying, and also they don't say something that is credible, that is a reality. So it's crazy that how all of this have been happening during the years, and that's something that is really, that I really like it about rap, because after Kendrick, for example, made the diss tracks to Drake, he destroyed Drake for 1 year. Of course, Drake is one of the biggest rappers of all time. He can be in that table of the 10 best rapper of all time than that. But by that moment, when was the rivalry, Drake was down because Kendrick destroyed him with the lyrics, of course, because he has more lyrics than Drake. And that's something crazy that you can enjoy as a fan of the rap, of the music. You understand that that's something that is bigger, because they are basically battle egos, or mostly from their credibility, and wins who has better knowledge of life, basically. It's a little more complex than just the East Coast and West Coast. When the artist competition become mixed with regional price, businesses, interests, the media, street conflicts, and personal rivalries, it can turn into something much more dangerous. The deaths of Tupac and Biggie became a turning point for hip-hop, but the culture continued evolving and expanded far beyond the two coasts. During the 2000s, rap became one of the biggest forces in the popular culture. Eminem proved that a rapper could dominate the global market regardless of his background, and brought hip-hop to an enormous international audience. Jay-Z transformed the image of the rapper into an entrepreneur and cultural figure. Kanye West changed the production of the song's fashion and the way that artists could experiment with hip-hop, not only talking about gangs, not only talking about poverty, not only about situation. You can talk about love, you can talk about life, what's your connection with Jesus. That's something that made Kanye West unique and different, of course.
In the 2000s, Wiz Khalifa came and revolutionized, expanded the rap with different type of lyrics, and also given a new and fresh sound.
50 Cent represented a new commercial era of the gangsta rapper. Lil Wayne became one of the most influential artists for this generation, and dominate the 2010s. Remember, Lil Wayne, they put it also in the top 10 because Lil Wayne is a person that he goes to the studio and he doesn't write nothing. All the songs that you heard from Lil Wayne is because he said, put me the track, and he just start rapping. He have that bless that he can rap whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and it's gonna be perfect. It's amazing how Lil Wayne do the rap is crazy, and when you see the videos, it's amazing. Honestly, it's amazing, brother. Outkast and Andre 3000 continue breaking the traditional regional and musical boundaries of rap, providing that hip-hop could come from anywhere and sound like almost anything. From the 2010 and the actuality, streaming and social media completely changed how rap was created, distributed, and consumed. For example, came Kendrick Lamar and brought conceptual, political, and storytelling-driven rap. Drake blurred the lines between rap, R&B, melodies. Nicki Minaj became one of the most influential figures in the evolution of female rap. Future, for example, helped define modern rap and trap through melody, autotune, and emotional vulnerability. Young Thug pushed the boundaries of flow, vocal experimentation, and songwriting, and Migos popularized rhythmic and flows that heavily influenced the next generation. Artists like Travis Scott pushed as well the hip-hop even further through productions, live performance, visual fashions, and overall experience surrounding an artist. And this is where we arrive at the rap we know today, a genre that started in the Bronx and expanded across the United States, across regional boundaries, and eventually became a global language. So the real question is, what is rap? Honestly, it's a cultural expression where we can keep connected with the people. The rap is a reflex of what we're happening in our societies. Since something that happening in a small country, in a small city, something that happening in something major around the countries, about the societies, what are the errors that we have? People that live in those lives that need to express in a way to feel freedom. During these whole years, the rap have been growing a lot, creating the Spanish rap, creating the rap and the movement that is happening in England, that is crazy, in Italy, in France. It's something that is cultural expanding. Everything came from the Bronx, and now it's something that we don't even imagine until where it's now located. Rap is the expression of the freedom. Art is a way of expression.